Explosions were not part of the morning routine on Mars, but today, breakfast was interrupted by a cacophony of metal tearing and alarms blaring. The red dust, usually content to settle quietly around the colony, now danced wildly in the chaos. "Everyone, this is not a drill," Commander Jane Lansing shouted over the intercom, attempting to maintain some semblance of order among the panicked colonists. However, the sight of a Martian quarantine zone being engulfed in flames was enough to make even the calmest of individuals lose their heads. As the chief engineer, Max Anders, sprinted through the corridors, his mind raced faster than his feet. "A decoy," he muttered under his breath, dodging a falling light fixture. "They're using us as a decoy." Max had suspected something was off ever since the alien fleet had appeared in their orbit, demanding compliance in a language half the colony didn't even understand. The realization hit him harder than the Martian gravity. They were expendable. The aliens believed their superior technology made them invincible, and that humans, insignificant humans, were just pawns in their cosmic chess game. Max skidded to a halt at the central control room, where Commander Lansing was already barking orders. "Jane, they think we're just a distraction. Tell me something I don't know, Max," she replied, yanking a lever that sent another wave of defensive drones into the fray. "But they didn't count on one thing," Max added breathlessly, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. "Our Martian chili cook-off training." Jane's eyes narrowed with understanding. "The spice," she mused, a plan forming. Time to turn up the heat. Outside, the alien mothership hovered, its crew blissfully unaware of the spicy surprise about to hit their sensors. But as the first container of Martian chili was launched towards the invaders, Max couldn't help but chuckle. He whispered to himself, never underestimate the power of a good chili. Just as the chili began to breach the alien ship's hull, an ominous silence fell over the control room, broken only by the sound of an incoming transmission. "Human colony, prepare to be." The alien voice crackled with overconfidence. "Seasoned," Max interrupted, his finger hovering over the button that would release the rest of the chili arsenal. The room held its collective breath, waiting for the alien response. Would their culinary counterattack be enough to send the invaders packing, or had they just turned a galactic skirmish into an interstellar cook-off? The Starship Spaghetti Western was never meant for anything more than a simple milk run between the settled moons of the Europa cluster. The ship's captain, Martini Delgado, had always said the ship was held together with duct tape and good intentions. Now, both those things were in short supply. Aboard the bridge, Martini was attempting to hold a conference call with his ragtag crew, but the ancient holographic projector kept glitching, projecting engineer Tessa's head 3 times its normal size and giving everyone the unsettling impression that she was about to swallow them whole. "Can someone fix this thing?" Martini barked, slamming his palm against the console. The image flickered but remained stubbornly oversized. "Sorry, Cap, this is the best you're gonna get," Tessa replied, her holographic mouth wide enough to eat a small moon. "I'm down in engineering trying to keep the reactor from having a nervous breakdown." "Speaking of breakdowns," interjected Jax, the ship's navigator and self-appointed comedian, "has anyone seen the actual spaghetti monster that's apparently trying to kill us?" The joke fell flat, much like Jax's attempts at humor usually did, but his words reminded everyone why they were gathered. They were under attack from something they couldn't see, only hear. A strange, unsettling sound like 1,000 whispering voices emanating from the ventilation ducts. Martini rubbed his temples, trying to focus. "All right, let's review. Tessa, any luck with the sensors?" Her oversized holographic head shook. "Nope, they're still offline. Best guess? We're dealing with some kind of stealth tech or, I dunno, a ghost?" "Ghosts aren't real," Jax piped up, "but if they were, they'd definitely haunt this ship." "Maybe it's the spirit of your last meal, Cap." "Very funny," Martini grumbled, though the thought of his last attempt at lasagna coming back to haunt him was more plausible than he cared to admit. "Could be something in the cargo hold," Tessa suggested, the practical one as always. "We picked up those crates from Titan. and no one really checked them out. The mention of the crates sent a chill through the group. They'd taken on some special cargo. A few stops back, courtesy of a shifty merchant who had insisted it was all perfectly legal. In retrospect, that should have been a red flag. Fine, Martini said, trying to muster some authority. Jax, you're with me. We're going to check it out. Tessa, keep this heap of bolts from falling apart. Got it, Cap. Just keep your comms on so we can all hear you scream, Tessa deadpanned. Martini and Jax made their way through the labyrinth and corridors of the Spaghetti Western *, their footsteps echoing ominously. The ship was eerily silent, save for the persistent whispering, growing louder as they neared the cargo hold. Do you ever get the feeling we're in over our heads? Jax asked, trying to sound casual. Every day, Martini replied, trying to keep his voice steady. But we're humans, right? The universe's most stubborn species. As they approached the cargo hold, the whispering reached a crescendo, a cacophony of unintelligible voices that seemed to seep into their very bones. Okay, that's officially creepy, Jax said, his bravado slipping. Should we, have weapons? Martini patted the laser pistol at his side, though he wasn't sure how much good it would do against disembodied voices. Let's just see what we're dealing with first. The cargo hold was dimly lit, shadows looming large against the towering stacks of crates. Martini and Jax moved cautiously, the whispering now feeling like a heavy fog pressing down on them. Martini gestured for Jax to take one side while he took the other. They approached the crates from Titan, their surfaces marked with cryptic symbols that seemed to shimmer in the low light. All right, Martini said, steeling himself. On 3, 1, 2, before he could reach 3, the crate nearest him burst open with a deafening crack, and a writhing mass of tendrils spilled forth, each one shimmering with an unnatural iridescence. Well, that wasn't in the brochure, Jax quipped, his eyes wide as saucers. The tendrils reached out, probing the air with a sinister intelligence, and Martini felt a wave of dread wash over him. Jax, get back, he shouted, but it was too late. The tendrils were upon them, moving with impossible speed. One wrapped around Jax's arm, lifting him off the ground with alarming ease. Cap, a little help here? Jax yelped, struggling to free himself. Martini fired his pistol, the laser beam slicing through the air and severing the tendril holding Jax. The tendrils recoiled, retreating back into the crate with a screech that set Martini's teeth on edge. Time to go, Martini shouted, grabbing Jax and making a beeline for the exit. They stumbled back into the corridor, slamming the door shut behind them. The whispering subsided, but Martini knew it was only a temporary reprieve. Now what do we do? Jax panted, leaning against the wall. Martini took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. First, we regroup, then we figure out how to get that thing off my ship. How do you fight spaghetti with a bad attitude? Jax muttered, shaking his head. Back on the bridge, Tessa was waiting with a worried expression. What happened? We found our ghost, Martini replied grimly. Some kind of alien thing in the crates. It's using some kind of stealth tech, maybe even psychic powers. Psychic spaghetti. Great, Tessa said, throwing her hands up. I knew I should have taken that job on the Mars colony. We need to figure out what it wants, Martini said, ignoring Jax's attempts to catch his breath dramatically. And we need to do it fast. Suggestions? Maybe we can lure it out, Tessa suggested. Use something it wants as bait. Like what? Martini asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew the answer. Jax perked up, his eyes lighting with a mischievous glint. Remember that case of whiskey you keep hidden in the captain's quarters? Martini groaned. You mean the whiskey I keep for emergencies? This kinda qualifies, don't you think? Jax said with a grin. Martini sighed, resigning himself to the inevitable. Fine, but if we survive this, you're buying me a new case. With the plan in motion, they gathered in the mess hall, Martini reluctantly placing the whiskey bottle in the center of the table. All right, Tessa, Martini said, you're on comms. Jax, you and I are the bait. Let's see if this thing is as thirsty as it is creepy. As they waited, the whispering began to creep back, echoing through the ship's corridors, growing louder and more insistent. It was as if the alien entity could sense the whiskey, its tendrils slithering closer. Here it comes, Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. The tendrils emerged from the shadows, hesitating at the edge of the room before inching toward the table. Steady, Martini murmured, his hand resting on his pistol once more. The tendrils paused, as if considering their options. Then, in a sudden flurry of movement, they lashed out, wrapping around the bottle and pulling it toward the shadows. Now, Martini shouted, firing his pistol. The laser sliced through the air, and Jax leapt forward, swinging a metal chair with surprising dexterity. The tendrils recoiled, the whiskey bottle tumbling to the ground with a clatter. The alien entity let out a shriek that reverberated through the ship, a sound of rage and frustration. Did we just make it mad? Jax asked, sounding a little too pleased with himself. Looks like it, Martini replied, watching the retreating tendrils with a mix of dread and determination. But at least we know it's not invincible. Tessa's voice crackled over the comms. Guys, whatever you did, it worked. The ship's sensors are picking up something. We might be able to track it now. Martini's spirits lifted at the news. That's something, at least. Let's see where it goes. The crew of the Asterisk Spaghetti Western gathered around the navigation console, watching the readings as the alien entity moved through the ship. It seemed to be retreating toward the cargo hold, perhaps to regroup or plan its next move. We need to get it off the ship, Martini said, formulating a new plan. Maybe we can eject the entire cargo hold. That's risky, Tessa warned. But it might be our best shot. Think of it as a high-stakes eviction, Jack said with a chuckle. Martini nodded, determined. Tessa, get down to engineering and prepare to jettison the hold. Jax, you're with me. We need to make sure it stays inside until we're ready. As Tessa raced to engineering, Martini and Jax made their way back to the cargo hold, the whispering once again crescendoing around them. Why'd I get the feeling we're about to star in a horror movie? Jax quipped, his nervousness seeping through. Just stick to the plan, Martini said, though he couldn't shake the same feeling. When they reached the cargo hold, the tendrils were already waiting, waving like a field of sinister seaweed. Hey, entity, Jax said, raising his hands in mock surrender. Can we talk about this? Maybe over a drink. Once this is all over? The tendrils surged forward, and Martini fired his pistol, trying to keep them at bay. Jax swung his chair with enthusiasm, though the alien seemed undeterred. Tessa, any time now, Martini shouted into his comm, his voice strained. Almost there, Tessa replied, the sound of frantic typing in the background. The tendrils closed in, and Martini realized they might not have enough time. Jax, Plan B. Jax blinked. Plan B? We have a Plan B? Run, Martini shouted, grabbing Jax and making a dash for the exit. They sprinted through the corridors, the alien entity in hot pursuit, tendrils scraping along the walls. Tessa, we're clear, Martini called into his comm. Do it. With a decisive clunk, the cargo hold detached, and the whispering stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening, the absence of the alien presence almost surreal. Cargo hold jettisoned, Tessa reported breathlessly. We did it. Martini and Jax slumped against the wall, relief washing over them. Well, Jax said, catching his breath, that was intense. Martini couldn't help but laugh, the tension finally breaking. Just another day on the Spaghetti Western. As the crew regrouped on the bridge, Martini took a moment to appreciate their survival. They'd faced a mysterious alien threat and lived to tell the tale, though he'd never look at spaghetti the same way again. Drinks on me, Martini declared, raising the bottle of whiskey triumphantly. To surviving the unimaginable, Tessa replied, clinking her glass against his. As they celebrated their narrow escape, the Spaghetti Western drifted through the vastness of space, its future uncertain but its crew unwavering. Whatever lay ahead, they knew they'd face it together, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity. But in the depths of space, the alien entity drifted in its ejected cargo hold, biding its time, its whispering voices plotting their next move. The cosmic dance was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. Lieutenant Gregor Grit Sanderson stared at the holographic map, his eyebrows knitting together until they threatened to merge into one disgruntled caterpillar. The map showed the human colony on KURZON-5, a rocky outpost so far from civilization you'd need a star map and 2 connecting flights just to file a missing persons report. Yet, here it was, labeled with a blaring red, decoy colony, which in strategic terms roughly translated to bait. Why'd I feel like we're the worms on the hook? Grit muttered, scratching his stubbly chin. His voice echoed in the small control room, designed with all the comfort and aesthetic appeal of a dentist's waiting area. The walls were a drab gray, punctuated by flickering screens and the occasional coffee stain that defied explanation. Across the room, Captain Marla Drayden sighed dramatically, a skill she perfected over years of commanding ragtag crews. Because, Grit, we are the worms, and someone very high up is fishing for space sharks. Grit rubbed his temples. Okay, fine, but how are we supposed to stop an alien armada with a colony that barely has enough power to run a food processor? Drayden leaned back in her chair, kicking her boots up onto the console. Easy, she said, exuding the kind of unfounded confidence only available to people with nothing left to lose. We improvise. As if to emphasize the absurdity of their situation, a klaxon suddenly blared, followed by a voice that crackled over the intercom. Attention, crew, an unidentified vessel has entered the sector. Repeat, unidentified vessel. Grit's eyes widened. Unidentified? Please tell me it's just the pizza delivery guy finally showing up. Drayden rolled her eyes. I doubt it, unless he's delivering pepperoni-flavored doom. The 2 of them exchanged a look of grim determination, or possibly shared indigestion, before rushing to the observation deck. The deck was a cramped, circular room surrounded by thick, reinforced glass. Or at least, that's what the manual claimed. Grit always thought it felt more like standing inside a snow globe, one that was about to be shaken vigorously. Peering into the void, Grit's heart sank. The unidentified vessel turned out to be a fleet of sleek black ships, resembling a school of predatory fish. They cruised through the vacuum with ominous grace, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it, as if to say, hey, we're here to ruin your day, but we're classy about it. Well, we're outmatched, Grit said, attempting to sound upbeat but failing spectacularly. Outmatched? Drayden said. Grit, we're the mouse fetching a stick of dynamite to a cat convention. Just then, the door hissed open, and in walked Ensign Rosa Patel, the ship's communications officer and unofficial morale booster. Rosa had the kind of optimism that could only come from someone who'd never seen a single horror movie. What's the situation? She asked, her eyes bright with the kind of naive hope that made Grit's stomach churn. Oh, nothing much, Drayden said, waving a hand dismissively. Just a horde of alien death machines here to turn us into space debris. Rosa blinked. Really? Is that bad? Grit and Drayden shared a look. Yes, Rosa, Grit said gently. It's bad. Like, your favorite ice cream dropped on the pavement, bad. Except replace ice cream with existence. Rosa frowned. Oh, well, maybe they just want to talk? Talk? Drayden laughed. Sure, with plasma cannons. The tension in the room was palpable, like a string pulled taut and ready to snap. Grit glanced at the map again, the blinking, decoy colony label mocking him. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life once more. Incoming message from the unidentified vessel. Grit's heart did a somersault. See, maybe they do want to talk, Rosa said, clinging to her optimism like a life raft in a storm. Drayden sighed. Fine, let's hear what they have to say. Rosa pressed a button, and the voice of the alien commander filled the room, deep and resonant, like a bass guitar tuned to existential dread. Humans of KURZON5, you are trespassing on territory claimed by the Lethari Dominion. Surrender your colony or face annihilation. Grit winced. So much for a friendly chat. Well, that's direct, Drayden said. I respect the efficiency. Grit leaned forward, pressing a button on the console. This is Lieutenant Gregor Sanderson of the human colony. We're just a peaceful settlement with no intent to infringe on your territory. There was a pause, and then the alien commander's voice returned, tinged with condescension. Your presence is a stain upon the galaxy. Prepare for destruction. The intercom clicked off, leaving silence in its wake. Grit sighed, turning to Drayden. Well, Captain, any bright ideas? Drayden tapped her chin thoughtfully. We could always try the old, turn off the lights and pretend we're not home, trick. Really? Rosa asked, eyes wide. Would that work? Not remotely, Drayden replied. But it's as good an idea as any. As they stood there, contemplating their increasingly grim options, the ship shuddered. The deck vibrated underfoot, and the lights flickered ominously. Grit glanced at the ceiling. Tell me that was just turbulence. Drayden shook her head. Nope, we've officially entered the being shot at stage of our mission. Great, Grit muttered. Just fantastic. The alien ships loomed ever closer, and the colony's defenses, if you could call them that, were pitifully inadequate. It was like bringing a water pistol to a firefight. The situation seemed hopeless. But then, something clicked in Grit's mind, an idea so ludicrous it just might work. Or get them all vaporized. Same difference, Captain, he said, a glimmer of determination in his eyes. What if we use the mining drones? Drayden frowned. The drones? For what, exactly? Are we gonna dig our way out of this mess? Grit shook his head. No, but we could rig them to emit false energy signatures. Make them think we're a much bigger threat than we are. Drayden considered it, her expression shifting from skepticism to intrigue. It's insane, but it might just buy us some time. Rosa clapped her hands. I love insane. Let's do it. With renewed purpose, the trio set to work, clambering over consoles and wiring circuits, their movements a flurry of desperation and adrenaline. The minutes ticked by, each second bringing the alien armada closer to their doorstep. Finally, Grit wiped his brow, stepping back to admire their handiwork. There, he said, let's hope this makes us look like 1,000 battleships. Drayden nodded, or at least not like a sitting duck. Grit pressed a series of buttons, and the mining drones hummed to life, sending out powerful energy pulses that distorted the colony's signature. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the alien ships slowed, hesitant. Looks like they're buying it, Drayden said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Grit allowed himself a small smile. For now, anyway, as the alien ships hovered, indecision palpable even from a distance, Grit's mind raced. This was their chance to turn the tide, to show that humans, though outmatched, were never truly outwitted. However, just as hope began to bloom, a new complication arose. A warning light blinked on the console, a malfunction in the colony's aging reactor. The energy surge had overloaded the system, putting them at risk of a catastrophic meltdown. Grit's stomach dropped. Oh no, we've got a reactor issue. Drayden cursed under her breath. Of course we do, because why not, right? Rosa bit her lip, her optimism starting to waver. Can we fix it? Grit glanced at the reactor's diagnostics, his mind racing through possible solutions. Maybe, but it's gonna be tight. We'll need to divert power from non-essential systems. Drayden nodded. Do it. We need every second we can get. As Grit and Rosa worked to stabilize the reactor, Drayden monitored the alien ships, her eyes never leaving the holographic display. The tension was a living thing, wrapping around them, squeezing tighter with each passing moment. Captain, Grit said, his hands moving swiftly over the controls. If we don't stabilize this reactor, we're going to have a very bad day. Drayden nodded, her face set in grim determination. Then stabilize it, Lieutenant. Failure is not an option. With sweat beading on his forehead, Grit focused on the task at hand. He rerouted power from the colony's entertainment systems, movie night, and poured it into the reactor's stabilizers. The warning light flickered, then dimmed, the threat of imminent destruction receding. We're stable, Grit breathed, leaning back in his chair. For now, the alien ships remained at bay, warily circling the colony. But Grit knew they couldn't hold the ruse forever. They needed a plan, a way to turn the tables for good. Drayden's voice broke through his thoughts. So, Grit, got any more bright ideas? Grit shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Captain, I'm fresh out of miracles. But even as he said it, a part of him, a stubborn, tenacious part, refused to give up. The human spirit, resilient and relentless, burned bright within him, a beacon in the night. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough. As the USS optimistically dubious drifted through the dark expanse of Sector 13, an area of space so notorious for its missing ships it was colloquially known as the Bermuda Tetrahedron, the mood aboard was less than jubilant. Captain Joe, I was promised an exploration mission. Macmillan stood at the bridge, her brow furrowed as the ship's systems inexplicably dimmed to the ambient glow of a nightlight. Chief Engineer Larson, why is the ship mood lighting set to romantic dinner? She barked into the intercom. There was a muffled clatter, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone hitting their head on a low-hanging pipe before Larson's voice crackled through. Sorry, Captain, the reactor's on the fritz again. I can either give you full light or full life support. Can't have both. Great, just great, Joe muttered, slapping a hand against the console. She turned to her first officer, Commander Dex. I should have stayed on Earth, Johnson. Any sign of those ghost ships? Dex was squinting at the radar screen, which was displaying a small animated cartoon of a duck tap dancing. No sign of hostiles, but this isn't what I'd call a reliable report. In the background, Ensign Binks, a young recruit with more optimism than sense, was busy trying to fix the ship's coffee machine by hitting it rhythmically with a wrench. Every thump sent a spray of scalding liquid across the floor. Careful, Binks, Joe called out. The last thing we need is a caffeine shortage on top of everything else. Just then, the ship shuddered, as if it had hit an interstellar pothole. Alarms blared, and the computer's voice, which they had affectionately named Half-Wit, announced, "Attention, proximity alert. Unidentified object approaching. Brace for impact, or don't. I'm not your mom." Joe gripped the console as Dex brought up the external cameras. The screen showed a hulking mass of metal, a derelict ship with flickering lights and an ominous aura, drifting toward them like a cosmic ghost. "Ah, the SS creepy as hell," Dex quipped. "And it's on a collision course. Larson, we need engines now." Joe shouted into the intercom, hoping the engineer wasn't too deep into the bowels of the ship to hear her. The response was a series of frustrated grunts and a string of expletives that were mostly drowned out by static. "Working on it, Captain. But I need more hands down here." Joe turned to the bridge crew, most of whom were pretending to look busy while surreptitiously eyeing the escape pods. "Binks, with me. Dex, you have the bridge. Try not to crash into anything too deadly." "Roger that, Captain. I'll aim for the marshmallow asteroids," Dex replied with a half-hearted salute. Joe, with Binks in tow, sprinted toward engineering, narrowly avoiding a collision with a cleaning bot that was determinedly smearing spilled coffee across the floor in a futile attempt to clean up. They arrived at engineering to find Larson, a wiry man with a perpetually harassed expression, elbow deep in what looked like a cross between a toaster and a nuclear reactor. "Glad you could join the party," Larson grumbled without looking up. "I hope you brought duct tape." "Sorry, fresh out," Joe replied. "But I've got a paperclip and a lot of misplaced optimism." "Good enough," said Larson, accepting the paperclip with a resigned nod. "Binks, grab that hydrospanner and pray it works like a magic wand." As Larson and Binks attempted to coax the engines back to life, Joe scanned the engineering bay for anything useful. Her eyes landed on a motivational poster of a cat hanging from a tree branch with the tagline, "Hang in there." It was a small comfort in the chaos. Minutes ticked by as the derelict ship loomed ever closer, its ominous bulk blocking out what little starlight filtered through the ship's viewports. The hull groaned in protest as the gravitational pull of the two vessels threatened to merge them in an unwelcome embrace. "Captain, we have a problem," Dex's voice crackled over the intercom. "The derelict ship is emitting some kind of signal. It's jamming our systems." "Of course it is," Joe muttered, wiping sweat from her brow. "Larson, we need those engines. Now." "I'm trying, Captain, but this system is older than my grandmother's vacuum cleaner." Larson barked back, frantically working with Binks. "I'm not even sure how it's still running." "Well, keep her purring a little longer," Joe encouraged, though her eyes darted nervously to the steadily decreasing distance on the collision monitor. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew on the bridge was dealing with their own challenges. Dex had resorted to using a handheld scanner to try and decipher the errant signals flooding their communication systems. It was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube with mittens. "Hey, Dex," Ensign Casey, who was monitoring the ship's trajectory, called out. "If we survive this, remind me never to take your vacation recommendations again." "Noted," Dex replied, his focus split between the scanner and the terrifying proximity alert. Back in engineering, Joe and her team were facing their own darkest moment, working against time and the laws of probability. Larson, with Binks' help, managed to bypass a fried circuit, eliciting a splutter of life from the engines. "Yes, we've got power," Binks shouted triumphantly. "Don't jinx it," Larson warned, as a new wail of alarms began. "Because I think I just smelled smoke." Joe's comm unit crackled to life. "Captain, this is Dex. The derelict is firing up its engines. They're trying to pull us in." "Perfect," Joe said through gritted teeth. "Larson, give me everything you've got." Larson glanced at Joe, a mixture of determination and resignation in his eyes. "We're about to find out if this jalopy can dance." With a final flick of switches and a dramatic pull of a lever, the optimistically dubious lurched as its engines roared to life, the ship peeling away from its grim suitor with all the grace of a drunken ballerina. "Yes, we're moving," Joe cheered. "Full power, Larson. Let's outrun this nightmare." On the bridge, Dex was wrestling with the ship's navigation, trying to find a safe path through the asteroid field that had conveniently appeared on their radar like a cosmic obstacle course. Each rock was a potential disaster, spinning lazily through the void like nature's shot put. "Hold tight, everyone," Dex announced, sending the ship into an evasive maneuver that would either save them or ensure their insurance rates would skyrocket. Joe rejoined the bridge, grabbing the console as the ship performed a series of stomach-churning twists and turns. The derelict ship, however, was relentless, pursuing them with a predatory grace that belied its decrepit appearance. "Captain, I have an idea," Dex said, eyes alight with a sudden burst of inspiration. "What if we use the asteroid field to our advantage?" Joe raised an eyebrow. "You want to play hide and seek with a ghost ship in an asteroid field?" "Pretty much," Dex replied with a grin. "All right," Joe decided. "Let's do it, everyone. Brace for evasive maneuvers." With that, the optimistically dubious plunged into the asteroid field, weaving between the massive chunks of rock with a deftness that surprised even its seasoned crew. Joe and Dex worked in tandem, navigating the labyrinthine paths while the derelict ship followed, undeterred. As the crew held their collective breath, Joe noticed something remarkable. Despite their dire situation, a strange camaraderie had blossomed among them. Larson's grumbling had become a kind of running commentary, and Binks' enthusiasm was infectious in its naivete. It was in these moments that Joe saw what made humans special, not just their adaptability or their creativity, but their ability to find humor in the absurd, to laugh at the face of the universe's darkest moments and say, "Is that all you've got?" The optimistically dubious twisted and turned, the derelict closing the distance. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and the hull creaked ominously. It was the darkest moment yet, The tension was palpable, the stakes sky high. In this crucible, as the asteroid field loomed and the derelict ship bore down, Jo and her crew faced their ultimate test. And in that instant, Jo knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The ship shuddered violently, a cacophony of alarms filling the bridge. Jo's heart pounded in her chest as she realized they were out of time, with the derelict finally overtaking them. The optimistically dubious was trapped, and the void of space seemed to close in with a chilling finality. But even then, as they stood on the brink, Jo's resolve never wavered. She looked at her crew, each one a testament to human tenacity and spirit, and knew that they would find a way through. They had to. "All right, team," Jo called over the din. "Let's get creative. Who has an idea so crazy it just might work?" Captain Lisa Huang found herself in a most unfavorable position. A position she could describe as being the filling in an alien sandwich. On one side, the voracious fleets of the Glorpax Collective. On the other, the insidious mind web of the neuroplasmic hive. Both hell-bent on consuming humanity like a delicious interstellar canapé. "Why is it always us?" she muttered, leaning back in her battered command chair aboard the SS Optimism, a ship whose name now felt like a cruel joke. The bridge around her buzzed with frenetic activity as the skeleton crew scrambled to keep the ship from falling apart. The Optimism wasn't just a ship. It was a tin can in a cosmic food fight, and the Glorpax had brought the mother of all slingshots. "Captain, we've got incoming gloom darts from the Glorpax destroyer, Cheese Crusher," Ensign Ramirez reported, his voice cracking like a teenager at a school dance. "They're, also laughing at us, ma'am." Complete with subtitles, Huang rubbed her temples, trying to massage the stress away. "Subtitles? How considerate of them to translate their mockery. Make sure to send our compliments on their multilingual pettiness." "Yes, ma'am," Ramirez replied, his fingers dancing across the console like he was playing the galaxy's least enjoyable video game. The Glorpax were a peculiar species, reminiscent of giant amoebas with a penchant for bad puns and worse intentions. Their ships were bulbous monstrosities, like someone had given a jellyfish a degree in advanced weaponry. The neuroplasmic hive, on the other side, was a more subtle threat, preferring to infiltrate and control rather than outright destroy. Their ships were sleek, shadowy things, darting through space with the grace of a lioness and the morality of a used car salesman. "Any chance we can use their overconfidence against them?" Huang asked, grasping at straws like a man sinking in a milkshake. "I've got a plan," said Lieutenant Kowalski, the ship's resident mad scientist and inventor of 3 separate types of interstellar waffles. "It's a long shot, but if we can reconfigure our warp drive into a makeshift harmonic disruptor, we might destabilize the Glorpax fleet's jelliform shielding." "How long will that take?" Huang asked, the glimmer of hope flickering like a candle in a hurricane. "About as long as it takes me to explain it to Jenkins," Kowalski replied, glancing at the engineering officer, who was currently examining a wrench like it was a holy relic. "So, let's just say we're on the clock." Huang nodded. "Okay. Jenkins, you're on waffle duty. Everyone else, let's keep this ship together long enough for us to pull a miracle out of our collective hats." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Glorpax destroyer Cheese Crusher, Commander ZLQRX was feeling particularly pleased with himself. The humans were cornered, their primitive technology no match for the Glorpax might. He imagined himself giving a victory speech, perhaps while playing the galactic anthem on his beloved theremin. "Prepare the assimilation projectors," ZLQRX ordered, relishing every syllable. "Let us show these humans the true meaning of the word, glorp." Back on the SS Optimism, things were heating up. The ship shuddered under the barrage of Glorpax fire, the shields flickering like a bad disco light. But amidst the chaos, Jenkins had found his groove. Kowalski's instructions, while complex, were finally starting to make sense. "Mostly. So, I just twist this knob and pray, right?" Jenkins asked, a bead of sweat tracing a lazy line down his brow. "Exactly," Kowalski confirmed, his voice filled with the kind of confidence that comes only from sheer desperation. And don't forget to hum a little tune. I've found it really helps with the cosmic alignment. As Jenkins twisted the final knob, humming what could generously be described as a nursery rhyme, a low hum began to fill the ship. It was the sound of the warp drive being pushed to its creative limits, like a cosmic artist with only 3 colors and a big dream. "Captain, we're ready," Kowalski announced, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and terror. "Fire the disruptor," Huang commanded, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Time to see if we can play the Glorpax like a fiddle." The ship vibrated violently as the makeshift disruptor unleashed its harmonic energy. The crew held their breath, hoping against hope that this wouldn't be their swan song. On the Cheese Crusher, Commander ZLQRX was about to launch into his victory speech when his ship's alarms went off, blaring the Glorpax equivalent of, "Oh dear." The Jelliform shields, usually so reliable, began to ripple and twist under the disruptor's influence. "What is happening?" ZLQRX demanded, his theremin slipping from his grasp. "Sir, the humans have somehow disrupted our Jelliform shields," a subordinate stammered, eyes wide in disbelief. "Impossible," ZLQRX sputtered, his confidence faltering for the first time. "Those shields are the pride of the Glorpax fleet." "Well, they seem to be the shame now," the subordinate mumbled under his breath, earning a glare that promised a future filled with paperwork. Back on the Optimism, cheers erupted as the Glorpax formation faltered. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The neuroplasmic hive, sensing weakness, shifted their attention to the Glorpax, eager to capitalize on the chaos. "Looks like the hive couldn't resist a chance to stick it to the Glorpax," Ramirez noted, his face splitting into a grin. "Never underestimate the human ability to be the most annoying kid in the playground," Huang replied, a smile tugging at her lips. But the battle was far from over. The hive was still a formidable adversary, and the Optimism was running on borrowed time and borrowed parts. The crew needed a new plan, and fast. "Captain, I've been thinking," Kowalski said, his eyes alight with a manic gleam. "The neuroplasmic hive ships are all networked together through their psycho-neural links. If we can find a way to feed them false data, we might get them to turn on each other." "That's a tall order," Huang said, considering the logistics. "But if anyone can do it, it's us. Jenkins, are you up for some digital mayhem?" Jenkins shrugged, his confidence buoyed by the success of the disruptor. "Why not? I've always wanted to see what happens when you cross a neural network with a human imagination." The crew set to work, scrambling to rig up a makeshift signal booster and a data scrambler. It was a race against time, as the hive ships began to regroup, intent on swarming the Optimism. "Captain, the hive is aligning their ships for a coordinated attack," Ramirez warned, his fingers tapping nervously on the console. "We just need a little more time," Huang replied, willing her voice to remain calm. She turned to Kowalski. "Are we ready?" "Almost there," Kowalski answered, twisting wires and fusing circuits with the finesse of a magician pulling rabbits from a hat. Finally, the signal booster was active. Jenkins took a deep breath, his fingers flying over the keys as he crafted a digital symphony of misinformation. The hive ships, their minds interconnected, suddenly found themselves bombarded with conflicting orders and phantom threats. "What is the meaning of this?" one hive mind demanded, its voice echoing through the psychic ether like a disgruntled librarian. "Why are you attacking me?" another mind shrieked, its paranoia stoked by the false signals. The hive fleet descended into chaos, ships turning on each other in a frenzy of confusion and betrayal. The crew of the Optimism watched in awe as their gambit paid off, the hive's unity unraveling like a poorly knitted sweater. "We did it," Huang said, her voice filled with disbelief and triumph. "We've actually done it." The celebration was short-lived, however, as the Optimism shuddered once more, the strain of the battle taking its toll. Systems began to fail, and the ship's energy reserves dwindled to critical levels. "Captain, we've got a problem," Ramirez said, his earlier joy replaced by grim reality. The ship's falling apart. We need a miracle, and we need it fast. Huang looked around at her crew, the men and women who had stood by her through the darkest of times. They were battered and bruised, yet their spirits remained unbroken. It was a testament to the human spirit, an indomitable force that refused to yield even in the face of overwhelming odds. Prepare for evacuation, Huang ordered, her voice steady despite the storm. We'll head for the escape pods and hope for a rescue. As the crew hurried to comply, Huang took a moment to reflect on their journey. They had come so far, defying the odds at every turn. And though the battle seemed lost, she knew in her heart that humanity would endure. They were fighters, dreamers, and stubborn to a fault. Captain, the escape pods are ready, Kowalski reported, his usual bravado tempered by the gravity of the situation. All right, everyone, Huang said, her gaze sweeping over the faces of her crew. Let's make sure our story doesn't end here. With a final nod, she led her crew to the escape pods, their hopes pinned on the slim chance of survival. But as the pods launched into the void, a glimmer of defiance burned in their hearts. They were down, but not out, and somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, the seeds of human resurgence had been sown. In the depths of the cosmos, where darkness reigned and hope seemed distant, a spark had been ignited. The humans had faced their darkest hour and emerged not victorious, but undaunted. The future remained uncertain, but one truth shone brightly: humanity's determination would never be extinguished. In the cold, unforgiving vastness of space, the crew of the USS Quokka had found themselves in a situation that even the most pessimistic member of the team couldn't have predicted. They were trapped aboard their ship, floating in the clutches of the Nebulon Beast, a massive, sentient gas cloud with a penchant for digesting metal and electronics. And to make matters worse, it had an uncompromising attitude that matched its massive size. The crew had been doing their best to survive, but morale was at an all-time low. The eerie glowing fog outside the windows didn't help, and neither did the fact that all of their attempts to communicate with the creature had ended in dismal failure. Captain Jet Armstrong, a woman known for her nerves of steel, was beginning to fray at the edges. "All right, folks," Jet said, addressing her weary crew in the dimly lit bridge. "I know things look bad right now, but I refuse to be Monster Chow. What have we got in the way of unconventional ideas? And I mean really unconventional." Lieutenant Sam Sparks O'Reilly, the ship's engineer, raised a hand. "I have an idea, but it involves a lot of duct tape and a disturbing amount of peanut butter." "Go on," Jet encouraged, intrigued despite herself. "Well," Sparks began, "if we can somehow create a short circuit in the beast's digestive system with a makeshift electromagnetic pulse, we might be able to convince it that we're more trouble than we're worth. For that, we need to rig up a contraption with whatever's handy." "And the peanut butter?" Jet asked, eyebrow raised. "Bribery," Sparks replied with a straight face. "Everyone loves peanut butter. Maybe this thing does too. We could use it as bait." Jet rubbed her temples. "It's insane, but I like it. Let's do it, everyone. Grab whatever you can find. We're building a peanut butter impulse." As the crew set to work, a palpable energy spread through the ship. There was hope, and with it came determination. The engineering bay became a whirlwind of activity as Sparks led the charge, directing crew members to gather metallic odds and ends, which they would wrap with duct tape until they resembled something like a weapon of mass confusion. The whole time, laughter echoed through the halls, a sound that had been absent for far too long. Crew members whooped and cheered as they fashioned the most bizarre device any of them had ever seen. "Okay, I think we've got it," Sparks declared, standing back to admire the contraption. It looked like a cross between a junkyard sculpture and a culinary disaster, with wires protruding in all directions and a glob of peanut butter perched on top like a crown. Captain Jet surveyed the creation with a grin. "Well, if this doesn't work, at least we've proven that humans can build anything out of nothing. Let's fire this bad boy up." With a dramatic flourish, Sparks flipped the switch. The device hummed to life, emitting a low rumble that resonated through the hull of the ship. The crew held their breath, waiting for a sign that their efforts had been in vain. But then, the Nebulon beast quivered. It was a subtle shift, but unmistakable. The cloud around the ship flickered with an iridescent shimmer, and for a moment, the oppressive weight of its presence seemed to lift. "We did it!" Sparks shouted, jubilant. "I think it's working." Suddenly, the ship's intercom crackled, and a deep, sonorous voice echoed through the corridors. "What manner of creatures are you, who wield such strange power?" The crew exchanged stunned glances. Was the Nebulon beast speaking to them? Captain Jet cleared her throat, stepping up to the nearest console. "We are humans, traveling through this quadrant, and we're really not interested in being digested today. Thank you very much." The voice was silent for a moment, as if contemplating this unexpected development. "Humans, you possess a resilience I have not encountered before. Your device, though crude, has disrupted my energy fields. Why should I release you?" "Because," Jet replied with a smirk, "we're not just resilient, we're annoyingly persistent. And if you let us go, we'll even share our secret weapon with you." "Secret weapon?" The voice echoed, intrigued. "Peanut butter," Sparks chimed in, holding up a jar. "Trust us, it's a game changer." There was a pause, and then the Nebulon beast emitted a sound that could only be described as a deep, rumbling chuckle. "Very well, humans, I shall release you, but know this: I will remember your ingenuity. Perhaps we shall meet again under different circumstances." With that, the shimmering fog surrounding the USS Quokka began to dissipate, retracting into the depths of space. The crew erupted into cheers, hugging each other in relief and disbelief. As the ship's systems flickered back to life, Captain Jet turned to her crew. "Well, folks, it looks like we've survived another day. And we've made a friend, or at least a very confused acquaintance, in the process." Sparks grinned, holding the jar of peanut butter aloft like a trophy. Never underestimate the power of a good sandwich spread. With the ship free and the way ahead clear, the USS Quokka set a course for home, the crew buoyed by their improbable victory. The Nebulon beast watched them go, its gaseous form drifting lazily through the void. In the days that followed, tales of the humans' bizarre encounters spread through the cosmic grapevine, reaching the ears of many curious and cautious entities. The story of the tiny beings who had bested a Nebulon beast with nothing more than duct tape, ingenuity, and peanut butter became the stuff of legends. And as for the humans themselves, they continued their journey through the stars, ever ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they knew, without a doubt, that they were not to be underestimated. In the hushed vastness of the Epsilon Eridani system, aboard the beleaguered ship, USS Magnanimous, humanity reached its inevitable crescendo. The ship had been built with an almost supernatural sense of human optimism, featuring the latest in domestic coffee technology and a full-service sushi bar. It was designed for leisure exploration, not fighting off a horde of malicious alien beings who looked alarmingly like sentient fungi with attitude problems. But here we were, Captain Sandra, Sandy, McAllister, with her uniform pressed and a mischievous twinkle in her eye, stood at the helm. Her crew, an eclectic mix of scientists, engineers, and a guy named Bob who won a radio contest, stared at her with a mix of hope and doubt. The aliens, known as the Spores, had underestimated the humans in every conceivable way. They thought we were defenseless, unprepared, and prone to panic. They were right about the sushi bar, but wrong on all other counts. The Spores, having cornered the Magnanimous in a cosmic cul-de-sac, prepared to deliver the final blow. Their leader, a particularly pompous mushroom named Glurblax, beamed a holographic message onto the bridge. "Earthlings," it intoned, "you have been a minor inconvenience. Prepare to surrender and be assimilated into the Great Spore Collective." Sandy chuckled, and her crew followed suit, each chuckle gaining in harmonic resonance until it was a full-blown concert of human defiance. "Assimilate this," she muttered with a wink, pressing a button labeled, "Do not press." The button activated the ship's most peculiar feature, the MacGyver Protocol. Developed by a team of engineers who had watched one too many 1980s TV reruns, the protocol unleashed the collective human talent for improvisation, resourcefulness, and making do with a paperclip, a rubber band, and a half-eaten sandwich. There was a flash of light, and the ship's systems began to transform. The sushi bar converted into a tactical command center, complete with holographic displays and a broccoli-shaped AI advisor named Veggie Bot. The coffee machine whirred into overdrive, dispensing caffeinated encouragements like, "You've got this," and "Sprowing those spores." Glurblax, still broadcasting his ultimatum, paused mid-monologue, his gills quivering with uncertainty. This was not in the spore manual. Humans were supposed to cower, not innovate. "What is happening?" he demanded, his voice losing its previous resonance. Sandy grinned, the kind of grin that suggests someone just figured out how to win a game of chess while blindfolded. "We're just getting started, Glurblax. Meet the power of human ingenuity." Bob, who had been quietly knitting in the corner, stood up, revealing a sweater that glowed with a strange energy. "It's the quantum knit," he explained, as if this were perfectly normal. "I figured out how to weave quantum mechanics into yarn." Bob's creation, powered by the collective energy of the ship's crew, began to pulse and shimmer, creating a field of improbability around the ship. The spore's lasers, once deadly beams of destruction, now turned into harmless beams of disco lights, complete with a funky bass line. The spores panicked. They had come face to gill with the one thing they could not comprehend, the unpredictability of human creativity. Glurblax's image flickered as he struggled to maintain control. "This cannot be. You are but primitive beings." Sandy shrugged, her hands moving over the control panel with the grace of a concert pianist who suddenly realized their piano could also make margaritas. "Primitive? Maybe, but we've got heart, and also, apparently, a quantum sweater." Veggie Bot chimed in, its holographic broccoli florets bobbing with excitement. "I suggest deploying the ridiculous Plan B, Captain." "Do it," Sandy commanded, the crew rippling with excitement. With a whir and a click, the magnanimous engines surged, powered by the mysterious quantum weave. The ship moved with impossible agility, performing maneuvers that were less Starfleet Academy and more Cirque du Soleil in space. The Spore's fleet, unable to track such erratic movement, collided in a spectacular display of interstellar pinball. Glurblax, now a bedraggled vision of fungal fury, tried one last desperate gambit. "We will not be defeated by your absurdity." "That's where you're wrong," Sandy replied, her voice filled with the calm certainty of someone who had just remembered they had a secret weapon. "Activate the Monty Python contingency." The spores were suddenly bombarded with a barrage of Earth's finest comedic broadcasts. The collective humor of Monty Python, stand-up comedy, and cat videos streamed relentlessly into their communication systems. The spores, who had no concept of humor, found themselves overwhelmed by the barrage of punchlines and pratfalls. In the chaos, the Magnanimous made its final move. Utilizing the improbability field, the ship appeared to split into multiple images, each one performing an elaborate dance routine choreographed to the theme of staying alive. The spores, bewildered and demoralized, began to retreat, their ships scattering like dandelion seeds in a cosmic breeze. Glurblax, realizing the catastrophic misjudgment, attempted to save face one last time. "We shall return," he blustered, but even his bravado sounded hollow amidst the laughter. Sandy turned to her crew, her expression a mix of triumph and disbelief. "I can't believe that actually worked," she admitted, wiping a tear of laughter from her eye. Bob, the unlikely hero with his quantum knitwear, shrugged modestly. "Sometimes, you just have to go with the yarn." The crew erupted into cheers, high-fiving and hugging, their collective spirit soaring as they realized they had turned the tide against the odds. The Magnanimous, once a symbol of leisure, now stood as a testament to human excellence and ingenuity. As the spores retreated, tails, or rather, mycelium, Between their legs, the crew of the Magnanimous savored their victory. They had proven that humanity, with all its quirks and creativity, was not to be underestimated. Sandy, acknowledging the absurdity and brilliance of it all, raised her coffee mug, now filled with a celebratory cocktail courtesy of the beverage machine. To humanity, in all its ridiculous glory, the crew joined in the toast, their voices echoing through the ship with pride and joy. They had faced the unknown, harnessed the bizarre, and emerged victorious. And in that moment, amidst the laughter and camaraderie, they knew they had truly shown what humans were capable of. In the vast emptiness of space, the Spore's defeat became a tale to be told across galaxies, a cautionary legend about the folly of underestimating humans. The Magnanimous, now a symbol of human resilience and humor, continued its journey, ready to face whatever absurdity the universe had in store. And so, with a quantum knit sweater, a broccoli AI, and a disco light show, humanity had not only survived but thrived. All it took was a little creativity, a lot of laughter, and the inexplicable power of a contest-winning passenger named Bob. The Magnanimous sailed on, its crew united by their triumph, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that as long as they had each other, and perhaps a good cup of coffee, they could face anything. They were the champions of the improbable, the masters of the absurd, and they wouldn't have it any other way. As the dust, or rather, cosmic debris, settled over the battle-scarred expanse of the Andromeda Sagittarius brink, humanity's latest triumph over the hideous Glorgax Collective was being toasted with the finest champagne that the makeshift mess hall aboard the SS Zesty Endeavour could muster. The room, cramped yet brimming with a haphazard array of humans, aliens, and a few sentient robots, was alive with laughter and the clinking of mismatched glasses. Captain Marcy, the Maverick, D'Angelo, her hair still defying gravity in a spectacular halo of curls, raised her glass high. Her voice cut through the jubilant din. To us, the ragtag band of misfits who manage, against all odds, to send the Glorgax packing with their appendages between their legs. Let it be known across galaxies. Humans may be small, squishy, and have an unhealthy obsession with reality TV, but by the cosmic dust, we persevere. The crowd erupted in cheers, a cacophony of different languages and sounds, each adding to the symphony of victory. Beside her, Lieutenant Sloan, Techie Ramirez, the ship's ever-innovative engineer, was already tinkering with a holographic display projecting crude animations of Glorgax ships retreating in cartoonish fashion. Each explosion was punctuated with a cheering crowd sound effect, courtesy of Sloan's peculiar sense of humor. Who knew the way to defeat an indomitable alien force was through the power of synchronized dance and a well-timed EMP? Sloan mused, leaning back in his seat with a satisfied grin. I always said rhythm is in our DNA. Meanwhile, across the room, Dr. Amelia, Doc Chen was tending to the last of the wounded, a three-eyed Xantari named Flibnox, who had joined their cause midway through the campaign. His species, known for their stoicism, could barely hide his admiration for humanity's resilience. As she bandaged his arm, he looked at her with a newfound sense of respect. Your species is quite unexpected, Flibnox admitted, his voice a series of melodic chirps that the translation software rendered into a Shakespearean drawl. I shall compose a ballad in your honor, though I fear the universe may not believe it. Amelia chuckled, patting his shoulder. Just make sure it has a good beat. We humans love a catchy tune. The victory over the Glorgax was not just a military triumph. It was a testament to humanity's ability to unite disparate cultures under a common cause. Once feared by many as reckless or unpredictable, humans had shown that their adaptability and creativity could turn the tide in even the direst of circumstances. Across the galaxy, species once skeptical of human ingenuity were now contemplating alliances, eager to learn the art of improvisational warfare and, of course, dance. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread like wildfire. In bars, living rooms, and on social media feeds across the planet, humans reveled in their species' newfound reputation as galactic heroes. Memes of Captain D'Angelo wielding a microphone like a sword went viral, and the hashtag dance like human quickly became a global phenomenon. Even the stodgy United Nations headquarters was abuzz with excitement, as diplomats practiced the human boogie, the very dance that had disoriented the Glorgax horde and turned the tide of battle. President Marcus Lee, addressing the world from the Oval Office, encapsulated the sentiment best. We have shown that humanity's greatest strength lies not just in our capacity for innovation, but in our ability to unite in the face of adversity. Today, we are not just citizens of Earth, but ambassadors of camaraderie across the stars. As the celebrations continued aboard the SS Zesty Endeavour, a small group gathered around a round table in the corner of the mess hall. Here sat members of the original crew, the ones who had set out on what seemed like an impossible mission months ago. Chief among them was Officer Bree Sharp Eye Thompson, the ace pilot whose daring maneuvers had saved the ship on more than one occasion. She leaned back, her chair teetering on two legs, and sighed with contentment. "Well, folks, this is one for the history books," Bree remarked, her southern drawl as smooth as ever. "Never thought I'd live to see the day when an interstellar war was won with jazz hands." Next to her, Communications Officer Raj Patel, who had been instrumental in deciphering the Glorgax's bizarre language, chuckled. "I guess it just goes to show that no matter how advanced the technology gets, nothing beats good old-fashioned human chutzpah." "But what now?" inquired Ensign Trixie Bubbles O'Donnell, the youngest member of the crew, her eyes wide with wonder. "What do we do when there aren't any more Glorgax to outwit?" Captain D'Angelo, catching the tail end of the conversation, sauntered over, her expression one of both pride and mischief. "Well, Trixie, the galaxy is a big place. We'll find new adventures, new allies, and I'm sure, new foes who need a lesson in the fine art of human improvisation. We've set a precedent, after all. Who knows? Maybe we'll start a trend. Alien dance-offs could be the next big thing." As the laughter echoed around the room, the crew knew that while their current mission had ended, their journey was far from over. Humanity, with its newfound reputation for creativity and indomitable spirit, had forever altered the balance of power in the galaxy. The galaxy, much like Earth itself, had changed. Borders would need to be redrawn, alliances rethought, and the interstellar community would have to come to terms with the fact that humans were a force to be reckoned with, not just for their technology, but for their unpredictability and flair. In the days and weeks that followed, representatives from across the cosmos ventured to Earth, eager to learn more about this peculiar species that had defied the odds. Galactic fairs became regular occurrences, where humans and aliens alike shared stories, technology, and most importantly, the joy of dance. The once feared Glorgax, now a humbled ally, even sent emissaries to partake in the festivities, their rigid forms gradually learning to sway in time to human music. And so, humanity's legacy was cemented not just as warriors or innovators, but as universal peacemakers, bridging gaps with humor, creativity, and a refusal to bow to the impossible. They showed that, in the vastness of space, it wasn't the size of your fleet or the sophistication of your weapons that mattered most. It was the size of your heart, the resilience of your spirit, and the ability to laugh in the face of danger. As Captain D'Angelo looked out from the bridge of the SS Zesty Endeavour, her eyes scanning the stars that were now a little less lonely, she couldn't help but smile. The universe was a strange, wondrous place, but she knew one thing for certain. Wherever there were humans, there would always be hope, humor, and a dance or two. And with that, humanity's story among the stars was just beginning.